She came to the city with only $2 in her pocket. It wasn't much, not even enough for a proper meal. But for her, it represented the courage to leave behind everything she knew and step into the unknown. She had grown up in a small town, where dreams were considered luxuries and survival was the daily battle. Her clothes were plain, her shoes worn, and her suitcase was more a memory box than luggage. But what she carried inside her heart was far more valuable than money. Resilience, hope, and the belief that even broken beginnings could lead to beautiful endings. The city was overwhelming, a landscape of shining skyscrapers, busy streets, and people rushing with purpose. She had no family here, no friends, no promises of work. Yet she walked forward with a quiet determination. $2 bought her a simple sandwich that she cut into two halves to last the day. She ate one portion slowly, savoring each bite, while saving the other for later. Hunger, she thought, could not defeat her spirit. On her second day in the city, she wandered into a small bookstore tucked between two tall buildings. She wasn't there to buy anything. $2 could not stretch to books. But she loved the scent of pages and ink, the quietness that reminded her of her childhood refuge in the town library. She asked the owner if she could help organize shelves in exchange for a few coins. The old man, charmed by her honesty and humility, agreed. She earned just enough to buy herself a warm drink, and for the first time in a while, she felt seen. What she didn't know was that across the street, a man sat in a black car, observing the world with a mixture of weariness and distance. He was a billionaire, known in business circles as ruthless, yet visionary. But behind the image of power was a single father, a man who carried the weight of both his empire and his daughter's tender heart. He had lost his wife years earlier, and though he could buy anything money offered, he couldn't buy true companionship or the warmth that his daughter missed. When his eyes caught the sight of the young woman arranging books with care, a spark of curiosity lit within him. She was not like the people he usually encountered, those chasing wealth, titles, or favors. There was something raw and genuine about her. She moved as if she had nothing to lose, but carried herself as if she possessed treasures unseen. Days passed, and he noticed her again and again, sometimes sweeping the store, sometimes carrying out bags of garbage, sometimes reading a worn-out paperback in the corner. Her clothes never changed, and neither did her quiet smile. One afternoon, when rain poured heavily, he saw her offer her umbrella to a homeless man while she herself got drenched. It was then that he stepped out of his car for the first time. He approached her with a simple question. "Why would you give away the only umbrella you have?" She looked at him, her eyes calm, and answered, "Because he needed it more than I did. I know what it feels like to have nothing. If I can make someone feel less invisible, then I've done something right." That answer pierced him. He had built skyscrapers, bought companies, and dominated boardrooms, but this young woman, with only $2, had a wealth he couldn't measure. Kindness, humility, and compassion. He began to talk to her, at first casually, then more often. He discovered her dreams. She wanted to study, to build a career, to give back to people like her who struggled at the bottom. She didn't want charity. She wanted a chance. He admired that. Most who knew of his fortune wanted what he could give, but she wanted only an opportunity to stand on her own. One evening, he invited her to meet his daughter. The little girl was shy, guarded, and had grown used to people fawning over her father for his money. But when this young woman knelt down to her level, smiled, and asked about her favorite storybook character, something changed. For the first time in months, the little girl laughed. Not a polite smile, but a genuine, heart-filled laugh. The father watched in silence, overwhelmed. He had hired the best nannies, teachers, and therapists, yet none had touched his daughter's heart the way this stranger had in mere minutes. The young woman became a regular presence in their lives, not as a nanny, not as a guest, but as a friend. She helped the little girl with school projects, taught her how to draw, and told her stories of courage and hope. The billionaire father, meanwhile, found himself drawn to the simplicity she brought. His home, filled with luxury but often empty of warmth, began to feel alive again. Meals were no longer silent. Laughter echoed through hallways that had once felt like cold marble chambers. But society was not kind. Whispers spread quickly. Who was this girl with no money, no status, daring to be close to a billionaire? People judged her harshly, labeling her an opportunist. Even some of his business associates questioned his choices. Yet he, a man who had seen countless false faces, knew her worth was not in her background, but in her character. He stood by her, silencing critics with the quiet strength of his conviction. Still, she doubted herself. One evening she confessed, "I came here with only $2. I have nothing to offer you." He looked at her with steady eyes and said, "You're wrong. You offered me something no amount of wealth could buy. You gave my daughter her smile back. You gave me peace in a world of chaos. You showed me that love doesn't measure bank accounts, it measures hearts." Her eyes filled with tears. For the first time since leaving her hometown, she realized she wasn't just surviving, she was living, and she was loved for who she truly was. Opportunities began to open up for her. With his encouragement, she applied for scholarships and got into a program that nurtured her skills. She started working on community projects, helping others who arrived in the city with nothing but hope. Slowly, she built herself a foundation. She was no longer the girl with $2. She was the woman with a purpose. The billionaire, meanwhile, discovered that love had softened his sharp edges. He still ran his empire, but he learned to balance ambition with humanity. His daughter thrived under the love and stability she received, growing into a confident and joyful spirit. Their bond grew deeper with each passing season. It wasn't built overnight, nor was it perfect. They faced challenges, disapproving voices, the demands of business, the insecurities of the past. But they faced them together, learning that strength in a relationship doesn't come from never falling, but from always choosing to rise hand in hand. Years later, when people told their story, they often began with the line, "She came with only $2. But those who knew them understood that the real treasure wasn't in what she lacked when she arrived. It was in what she carried within her. $2 started the journey, but love, resilience, and faith shaped the destination. She had found more than a home in the city. She had found a family. He had found more than a companion. He had found a woman who reminded him of life's true wealth. And together, they proved that worth isn't measured by what you own, but by who you are and what you give. And so their story became a quiet legend, not because it was about a billionaire and a girl who started with nothing, but because it showed that in a world obsessed with riches, the greatest fortune is recognizing the value of a genuine heart.